Welcome to Psychanooga.
I'm your co-host, James Grant.
And I'm your other co-host, Bethany Copting.
Today, we are going to be talking about IO psychology.
And what is IO psychology, James?
It stands for Industrial Organizational Psychology.
For this episode, we talked to Dr. Cunningham and Dr. O'Leary with the psychology department.
So Dr. Cunningham primarily works in the graduate program.
Why do you think IO psych is important?
I think there's a lot of importance in it, not only in streamlining productivity in businesses, but also ensuring that people stay healthy and people enjoy their work. And there are a lot of practical things it does, it looks at the science of actually how to manage employees and how to set employee expectations. It talks about job descriptions and qualifications for jobs and things like that. And the more I've gotten real world experience in the workplace, the more I've realized how important job descriptions are. The jobs that I really haven't liked have had loose job descriptions, because then there are more things they can make you do that weren't even your things to do.
Right. That's a very important piece of, I think, job. You said that, the jobs you didn't like as much were the ones that had a loose job description. I feel like some toxic workplaces could definitely take advantage of that. And be like, oh, well, we could just make them do whatever we want to do.
Yeah. Give you multiple roles.
Yeah. And here's Dr. O'Leary.
Thank you for meeting with us, Dr. O'Leary.
You're welcome.
We're here to talk about IO psychology, which I know you're very familiar with. Can you define IO psychology for us?
Industrial organizational psychology is essentially psychology in the workplace. So basically, you just take psychology, stick it in the workplace, apply most of what we talk about in psychology to find out how people work together. And the ultimate goal of IO psychology is to improve performance.
As the department head, do you find yourself applying the kind of strategies in IO to the department very often?
It is a very applicable field of study. So this is a workplace, and everyone in the department has a brain, and everybody uses them. And we have different personalities, we have different interests. You think about it, a customer is somebody that basically, you provide a service or you provide a product, right? And they pay money for it, and you give it to them, right? So when we are providing our service as education, and the output, if you will, is your transcript and your grades, but you're not purchasing grades. So it's a little different. It's I want an A, I paid my money. It's no, it doesn't work quite like that.
Right. So,
but all of the things that happen in IO psychology in the workplace happen here at UTC. I'm an old guy, and I came up back when jobs were still kind of cradle to grave, especially with larger organizations. So you came in, you worked your 40 hours a week for 40 years, and you got a gold watch and a pension. That doesn't happen anymore, virtually any place. And when we talked about work-life balance, basically we were thinking, well, I've got a job, so I can balance that with my life, right? I have a job so I can pay for all the things that go on outside of my job. But there's more to a job than just paying bills, right, and making money. And I think that people are much more focused on the value of what they do, integrating their work with their interests and their lives. Instead of work-life balance, some people call it work-life harmony. Most people have to work for a living for a certain period of time during their lives. And so if you think about work-life harmony, is like they're always going to be together. So how then do you figure out what the appropriate balance is? And it's not the same for everybody, right? The fulcrum moves from one end to the other depending on what you enjoy and how much you need social life or other things, right? Some people are totally absorbed by their job, and that's a lovely thing for that person, so long as maybe they're not married or have children, right? So you have to look at that balance in terms of what other parts of your life are important, right? So work is important. It's like, you talk about job identity, right? I've been department head for 14 years. I've been here for 24 years. And what I have learned as an IO psychology has helped me do the job. IO psychology grew out of the Industrial Revolution back, when people were just kind of cogs in a machine, right? Yeah. You bring them in, you use them up, you throw them away, you replace them, and you can look and see pictures of people in the late 1800s, early 1900s, in manufacturing environments where there are belts and gears and saws and just a really dirty, hot, children working, 12-hour days, 16-hour days. No labor laws. Minimum wage wasn't a thing, right? I mean, so you were getting paid pennies pennies a day for 16-hour day, and then you were expected. And there weren't necessarily weekends either, so there could be a 6 or 7 hour work day with children that were 10, 11, 12 years old. So the environment was horrible. But like Frederick Taylor came up with scientific management in terms of how to get more work out of an individual by like time and motion studies. So they found that you could do more work in a day if you had a few rest periods, so particularly for somebody that was doing heavy manual labor, picking up iron and putting it into a wheelbarrow and moving it along and putting it in another pile someplace, right? If you were doing something like that, you just you took a little rest period every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. You could do more work, so you sucked more life out of the people. And then eventually we progressed to more of a humanistic approach to IO psychology, recognizing that they weren't just cogs in the machine, but they were actually people with feelings, people with personalities, people with families. That came kind of later, but just the idea that we had to deal with the whole person when they came to the workplace, and recognizing that some people were motivated to work, some weren't, some needed cajoling, some needed to be left alone. So the individual differences surrounding the people in the job, and then how to deal with people in different situations and in different organizations, in manufacturing versus service organizations, right? Dealing with issues of discrimination and racism, sexism, homophobia, all those different types of things came as we moved through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so it's become much more focused on the worker than the organization. In the beginning, organizations paid IO psychologists to help them improve efficiency, right? I mean, like Frederick Taylor was an engineer. He wasn't a psychologist. So he was looking on how to make the machine more efficient. And so when we moved away from that and said, okay, we still want to improve performance, which is what IO psychology has to do.
For anyone who's interested in IO or any sort of business, kind of merge of business and psychology, if someone's considering going through the master's program or anything, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I guess I do. Is just make sure that, first thing, graduate education is different than undergraduate. If you want to go into graduate education, particularly at the master's level, it costs money. We do have some graduate assistantships available, and we do a pretty good job of providing some financial support to anybody who wants it in the program. But just like anything else, it's an investment, and I don't know what the average debt is when somebody gets out of their master's program. They put it on top of undergraduate debt. But it's the price of a Tesla, a cheap Tesla. So what you're doing in graduate education to a certain extent is saying, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I need to do this to get where I want to be. It's much more voluntary than undergraduate, right? It's almost as if everybody, that it's like undergraduate education is a right? It's like it's an expectation. You go there. So while high school is mandatory, college is almost like people feel that you have to go there. Although a large number of young males are not going to college anymore that probably would have in the past. And so that's something that we have to deal with as academia, right? But graduate school is one of those things that you're investing time and money into study of industrial organizational psychology in this case, and you expect to get a return for it, right? So nothing comes free, nothing is cheap. You don't learn without effort, right? I wish you could, because I would. Right, I'm not a great studier. I have to force myself to get into the nitty gritty sometimes. There are things that I love studying, and then there are parts of my job. It's just like, I gotta do that, and I do it. But I've learned that over 40 some years of working, is like you recognize that there are just parts of your job that have to be done, and whether you like them or not. So it's voluntary, and it is career focused, and we're here to help you on that academic adventure, but you gotta want it. Yeah. This isn't where we're trying to retain you anymore, right? This is, okay, you do it or you don't do it. You succeed on your own. Of course, we'll help you. We provide the structure and the support. But ultimately, if you don't do the work, you're not gonna succeed.
So here's Dr. Cunningham.
I'm Dr. Chris Cunningham. I've been part of the UTC Psychology Department faculty since August 2007, so it's been a while. I have been the director of our graduate program for industrial and organizational, or we call it IO, psychology, for the past 8 or 9 years. This program was actually one of the first 4 graduate programs that UTC ever put in place back in 1975. And so this coming August is actually going to be our 50th anniversary, which is kind of a big deal. We've probably graduated more than 800 master's level students ever since, because it runs every year. There's a cohort or a group of students that gets admitted. And the majority of our students are either already working and then they're kind of reskilling to climb into management or higher level roles, or they're interested in getting into jobs that require expertise in the psychology of people in a work setting. And that's kind of our big draw. And so we pull people in from all over the world to come and study here. Each year we bring in about 20 students, and it's a 2-year commitment for the students. So at any given time we have like 40 or 50 graduate students here in the program. And that's kind of the nutshell summary.
That's awesome. Yeah. How would you define IO Psych?
Yeah. So for me, IO psychology is a very applied area or division of psychology. As I mentioned before, people in this field are very focused on how and why people do what they do in work settings. And in addition to researching and studying that, we also use what we know about this in our theories and our evidence from research studies we use all that to try to help managers do a better job managing, companies do a better job designing work, improving the way we compensate and reward people so that it's fair and equitable and adequate and sufficient. A lot of the work that's being done these days also works toward a goal of protecting and promoting worker health, safety, and well-being. And that's another area that I have a lot of background and experience in, as well as some of my colleagues here at UTC. And so we've become pretty well known and respected for helping organizations tackle those types of goals as well.
Mm-hmm. And if someone has an interest in that and is considering the master's program, could you give a broad overview of what that looks like?
Yeah, as a potential applicant, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we have a very well-established program, and there have been periodic rankings of programs over the years using different methodologies. And in the last big ranking effort that was done by the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology, that's SIOP, so SIOP.org is kind of our professional group. They commissioned 4 separate studies to evaluate the quality of graduate programs a few years back. And what was really interesting, and we were really thankful for, our program ended up in the top 5 or 10 on every one of those studies. And in some cases, we were top 1 or 2 or 3, depending on the dimension. Talking with others since those rankings, the impression I've been getting from applicants and alums and other people in our arena, our standings continue to climb. So the reason I'm sharing that, leading with that, is that we are not a safety school when it comes to graduate education in IO Psych. I know that at the undergraduate level, it's pretty easy to get into UTC. It's an amazing school, but the barrier to entry is not real high. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great for undergraduate education. I've worked with some really great students here over the years, and I think that that's where it should be at the undergraduate level. But at the graduate level, you want to get into a program like ours, you actually have to work toward that and plan for that. You're not going to be able to just kind of backslide into it. And so what does that look like? Well, you need to do well in your core courses. You do not have to be a psychology major to apply for our program. We accept people with different types of backgrounds, but you would need to have some basic education in psychology, so like an introduction to psychology course, successful completion of research methods and statistics in behavioral or social science arena. And ideally, you'd take our Introduction to IO Psychology undergraduate course, which we offer every fall and spring. And that's a really unique offering at the undergraduate level, but it helps you understand what the actual landscape is. So I think the course number here at UTC is 4060 for that course. So those are kind of the curricular requirements. And in addition to that, you'd need a decent GPA overall, and your major GPA should be good. On average, the cohorts we've admitted in recent years have had a GPA on average of around 3.76 or something like that, which is very high. Honestly, it's kind of competitive with what some PhD programs require. But the reason it's been so high is we've had so many applicants. Like, we probably get about 100 applications a year. We have a really detailed website that's connected to the psychology department's homepage, so if people are interested, they can certainly go there. But because that website's so detailed, we also try to be really transparent about what are we looking for in applicants. So in other words, here's what a good applicant looks like. And we put all that information out there to try to signal to people, if you don't have these things, it's going to be a long shot, But because we put all those things out there, almost everybody who applies meets those criteria. So it's actually quite a difficult process for us to screen candidates and make decisions. So in addition to building yourself up in your own academic record, looking at our criteria on the website, applicants to our program also need at least 2 letters of recommendation from people who can comment on their academic capabilities and ideally their work-related capabilities. So the best applicants are good, solid students who have also had some work experience. And it doesn't have to be in human resources or something like really strictly IO related. It can be in really any kind of work environment, though, where you've developed a track record for dependability, good character, good judgment. Maybe you've even been involved in recruiting or training or mentoring other people, and you've started to see what you like about work and what you don't like about work, where work could be made better, that kind of stuff. We don't require standardized graduate level tests like the graduate record exam, the GRE, or anything like that. We used to, but ever since COVID, we've stopped requiring that. But in its place, we have some question prompts that people have to respond to. It's kind of like a personal statement. And then our top 40 to 50 candidates each year have to complete an interview where we dig into a few other personality characteristics and try to make sure that this program is a good place for that student to pursue whatever their career goals are. Because at the graduate level, it's really important that there's a good alignment between what the student's trying to accomplish and what the program can provide, because it's a huge investment from the graduate program in the student, and the student's making a pretty big investment in the graduate program. So we really want to make that alignment work out.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, we admit one cohort, one group, as I mentioned earlier. That group starts with us in August, and it's a 2-year program. So they'd go August to August, and then August to May, and they'd be done. It's a pretty traditional schedule. Everything is taught in person. You take 12 courses in the first semester, 12 credits in the first semester, not 12 courses. 12 credits in the second semester. You take 3 credits in the summer where you're out there doing an internship or what we call practicum. And then the second year, you'd have 1 semester of 9 credits and another semester of 9 credits, and then you're done. So it's 45 credit hours total to complete a Master's of Science degree with us. We are a STEM designated program now for the last few years, and that's a pretty big deal, especially for people who might be traveling here as an international student. Having a STEM designated degree helps with visa requirements, allows you to get more work experience in the time you have. But also for students that are interested in pursuing, solid, strong paying jobs, having a STEM degree can really help out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's more detail on any of that I'm happy to go into, but that's kind of the broader brushstrokes there.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned the rankings that the program falls under. What would you attribute the consistent high rankings to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've perfectly figured out the secret sauce, but on the homepage to our program, I have, over the years, added to it what I hear from others. And so we have a list currently on our homepage of I think it's now top 11 things that make our program unique. And one theme that you'll see if you look at those 11 factors is a real emphasis on our people and our culture. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds pretty vague and can be kind of hard to quantify, but from a people side of things, we have really dedicated faculty, and every one of them is incredibly talented and really knows what they're doing. They really could go anywhere, but they're here, and they are committed to making this program really, really strong. So that matters. But in addition to those people, the faculty people, we also are really lucky, blessed, and able to be picky about the grad students we bring. So every single grad student who's here, again, could go anywhere, and they're here because they wanted to be a part of this. And so that gives them a fair degree of ownership and drive and motivation, and it just really challenges everybody to kind of give their very best, right? So that's part of it. And then that kind of spills over in our culture. We really work hard to create a culture that's characterized by support. We hold everybody at really high expectations, but we don't tolerate hyper competition in the classroom or stuff like that. We're not here to make other people look bad. We're here to try to help everybody increase. And that catches on. Some people really love that, and it allows them to focus less on managing impressions with others, but more on just growing and developing and doing their very best. So I think those two things really have helped us stand out from many of the other graduate programs that are out there. There's others that do likewise, but we just have had a really good, long track record of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do those courses in the master's program look like? What do y'all, what is
if you were a student, what would it
Yes.
feel like? Yeah, so most listeners will at some point have an opportunity to sit in what we call an advanced seminar within our curriculum, like the 3,000, 4,000 level courses, where you'll have a set of core readings, and then the class won't just be straight lecture, but there will be discussion and sometimes activities built into class. That's pretty close to what most of our classes actually feel like.
Okay.
The difference is that the reading demands are going to be higher. Mm-hmm. The expectation that everybody's coming to class prepared is going to be a lot higher. And what I usually tell applicants when they're being interviewed is just imagine yourself no longer being the smartest person in the room. Everyone around you is at least as smart and sharp and driven as you are. And you're now going to be forced to kind of bring your A game or raise your bar a little bit. And if that sounds exciting, then that's the kind of environment we have. And it's good for us too as faculty because it challenges us. Like we have to be on our A game all the time because they're going to ask really tough questions and they're going to raise really good observations. So it's like your most challenging upper level seminar, but more interactivity. You can't just kind of skate by not answering questions. Like everybody is expected to participate. There's a fair amount of group work, a lot of collaborative projects. In IO, it's a very people-facing job in most cases, so we do a lot with learning how to be effective presenters, learning how to write for different audiences, learning how to communicate real clearly, because that's a big part of the job no matter where you go. And so those are other themes that are emphasized. And then the only other difference is most undergraduate courses are split to meet 2 or 3 days a week. Most of our graduate courses only meet 1 day a week. But it's a long meeting, so it's like a 2.5-hour class, and so they might be a typical schedule might be 2 afternoons a week you're here, and then 2 evenings a week you're here. So 5:30 to 8 Monday and Wednesday, and then 12:30 to 4 or whatever on a couple other afternoons. That would be a typical schedule. So it looks on your calendar like you get all kinds of free time, but it's taking 4 classes is basically like having a full-time job in terms of how much time it's going to take you to read and write and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Any final thoughts that you wanted to share with students?
I just think it's really cool you guys are doing this. I think it's a great way to reach people, and I think that anybody listening hopefully can appreciate the value of this as well. If anyone is interested in learning more about IO Psych, they can talk with me or any of our other faculty. As I mentioned, we've put a lot of time and effort into that website, so we always encourage people to check that out and see if it answers their questions, but they don't need to be ashamed of raising a question that may already be there. Like we'll provide that input. And also, one resource that gets passed over a lot is undergrads don't interact with our graduate students as much as they could. So don't be afraid to introduce yourself to one of our grad students or ask them questions. They used to be where you guys are. They remember what that was like, and they're usually happy to share their expertise.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good advice. Thank you.
You bet. Great.
Yeah.
Best of luck, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
My favorite part when I took IO Psychology when at Leary was he made us all make a star, but the instructions were really vague. And he didn't yell at us. Yelling isn't the right word, but he was very mean to us throughout the whole thing. Like insulting us and telling us we were doing it wrong. And at the end he was like, this was an example of what you don't do in leadership. See how bad your stars were?
Wow.
Something like that. I don't remember.
Wait, what was you made us, like, was it like a paper star or something?
What we did was we folded stars into like triangle shapes, and then we fit all the shapes together and it made a little star.
Okay. And then he, like, yelled at y'all at the end and was like, that's not what the leader should.
Well, he went through like, as we were doing it, he walked around and was like, you're not doing that right, you're not doing that right. What is that? Then at the end he made an example out of it or something, I don't.
That's kind of cool, though.
It was cool.
I like that. It's like, okay, did y'all like that? And they'd be like, no. Well, good, because that's what a bad leader
That's
looks
wrong.
like. That was wrong.
Yeah.
That's what not to do. I liked that. Perfect example of what not to do.
And then he played rock music before we took tests.
Oh, what kind of rock music? Like what bands?
I don't even remember. He played some like summer song for our last exam because it was a spring semester. I would have done a Bon Jovi song.
Okay.
I just remember him playing music and be like, let's do it. And we were all tired because it was a 9 a.m. class. Or 9:25 class. This has been Psychanooga. I'm your co-host, James Grant.
Now I'm your other co-host, Bethany Cawthon. Thank you for listening.